All right, we're going to call the Board of Appeals meeting to order for the 1st of November, 7:30. Would you all please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the acceptance of the minutes from June and August. And it was tabled at the last meeting, just for discussion purposes, to make sure everybody have a chance to review it.
A different agenda than
I don't think so.
yeah, okay. Oh,
I just wanted to make sure, Merrill, that in the June meeting, as it related to Mrs. Allen, at one point I had made an apology to her for the delay. Just want to make sure that gets noted in the June memo. Short of that, I would hear a motion to approve with that change.
so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'll declare that approved. Next, we have committee reports. The Osgood Committee.
They didn't meet.
They didn't meet. All right.
Meryl, do you know when the next meeting is scheduled, or is there anything in the? Okay, so.
An email this week.
Okay. In my town email or my personal email?
The new town email.
Which I haven't done yet. No.
Meryl did mine.
All board members now have a town email, you just might not have set it up.
I have not set it up.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll come back to that.
And just for the record, if you wanted it, anyone wanted to attend, it is on the town website, the location and the time of the meeting. Public is always welcome. Done.
Okay. All right, thanks. Items 4 and 5 on the agenda, we have a signed time waiver request for continuance from Ryan Sharenda as it relates to the property, his variances for 54 Phillips Court and 320 Pleasant Street. And, you know, I think I'd be remiss if I just didn't say on the record that Ryan's dad, George Sharenda, passed away. Was a great public servant to the town, so I'd just like to note that, for the record, that he would certainly be missed from his public service.
Condolences to the family as well.
So those would need to be continued to the next date. We do have the signed time waiver from Attorney Vaughn.
I'll make a motion to continue, what is it, the number 4 and 5 to December 13th, which is our next meeting.
Okay, is there a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that stands continued. Next, item 6 would also be a continuance as it relates to the petition of Mr. Brecker, who's here through Attorney Bornstein for the property at 271 Stevens Street. A time waiver has been signed while they sort out some remaining legal issues as it relates to the property. So the board is certainly not prejudiced by that continuance either. I would hear a motion to continue.
I'll make a motion to continue 271 Stevens Street to December 13th meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That stands continued. Okay, so we have 2 additional public hearings tonight. We're going to go a little out of order or in order, I guess. I thought it was out of order, but Pond Pasture is going to be up from a previous continued hearing. They are seeking a dimensional variance and a waiver from the Watershed Protection District as it relates to the construction of an addition to the Edgewood facility.
Okay,
Mr.
thank
Capola.
you. Bob Capola, Edgewood Retirement Community. Thanks for seeing us tonight. Glad
Sure.
we were able to all make it.
Thanks to have you back.
Just want to give you an update as to, you know, where we are in the project. We certainly had a site walk with you folks, and if there were any questions from that or any other questions, we certainly want to address them for you this evening. But we have since completed our stormwater review with Lisa Eggleston. I'm not, Merrill, did they get a copy of that? Okay. So Lisa has, we've met all of the conditions for the stormwater management. We've also completed everything with tech, DPW. We have all the sign-offs from the internal groups of the town as far as meeting compliance with the project. And just want to ask you if you have any questions. If not, would like to move forward with this process.
All right.
And we are going to the planning board after this tonight. They were planning on closing the meeting, provided we have a positive vote from you folks and allowing us to
Sure.
move forward.
So in order to proceed at the planning board requires at the special permit level, you first need the waiver as it relates to the no disturbance area to set your footprint, as I recall.
Correct.
Yeah, just to recap, I mean, there was a posted site walk that I was on, and we didn't have any deliberations on it. You were on it too, Ms. Jacobs, right?
Yes.
And Nathan?
Yes.
I think you made that one too?
Yep.
I don't know if anybody else had a chance to walk it. It's certainly very helpful, I think, to see the area and as it relates to the topography. You know, the impacts of what's proposed is always better, I think, to see up close and personal, just from the prints. So we do not have filed Lisa Eggleton's stormwater calcs? So Lisa Eggleston is the town peer review
Peer
consultant?
review. Yep.
That's reviewed your analysis for stormwater management for that area
Correct.
in the watershed district for it?
Correct.
Okay. Did she not send it to us? Or-
He sent an email this afternoon, and it was attached. I responded and asked him if he would like copies printed to the board, and I did not receive a response in regard to that, so I did not print them.
Okay, so I'm confused. Did we receive it? Did the office receive it?
Via email, we did.
Okay, like a PDF or so? So the report is in the,
Yeah, we have a copy of the full report.
But we
here,
don't
if you
have
want
it.
to take that with you.
I have it with me on
Is
the
it-
computer right now.
is it in the zoning file?
Is there a reason why the board did not get a copy of it? Because I know we specifically asked for it.
Well, we weren't sure if you needed a copy of the report or if you needed to see Lisa Eggleston's approval that would met all the conditions. So we did bring one in case anybody wanted
Well, I mean, I think,
to review that.
I think when we reviewed it and we had it open, part of it, I do make notes on what's required. So that was one of the specific things that we actually asked you to do, is to get a letter or something from conservation. So it was a specific thing that was asked of you to present to the board,
Correct, which is what we have.
not before the
no, not if
meeting.
it's not on
At the
paper.
meeting, so.
so, I mean, I guess there's just a little confusion. I mean, if anything that comes into the zoning office, if it gets filed, all the members have to get it, you know, because if it gets into the file, then, you know, we have to be able to read it. I mean, I couldn't advise you in terms of whether you should file or should not file anything in particular, because it's your petition, so, you know, it's your request for relief. The more information the board has, I think the better, particularly when it relates to a variance, or, you know, in soil shape and topography. So, I mean, I haven't had a chance to, this is my first look at this right now, and thank you, but I haven't had a chance to review it as it relates to the variance.
Joe, Ken Costello, SMRT Architects and Engineers. We went through many iterations of the stormwater report and the stormwater design with Lisa Eggleston, and we just received her sign-off earlier this week,
Sure.
Monday, basically saying that she was done with her review and she's accepted our site design, our stormwater design.
Okay,
I mean, we went through, I think, 4 revisions with her.
so she's working with the planning board, right?
She's working for the town, yes,
Well, she's working for the planning
for
board.
the planning board.
She's not working for the zoning board.
No, she's
So-
working for the town. I mean,
Right.
she's basically giving her report to the planning department.
I understand she's giving a report to the planning department.
Yes.
But you understand that if you need this board to set a footprint,
Yes,
how- and you're giving it to the other board before we set the footprint, like, that's a little, you see, that's a little hard for us to try to, especially if we're talking about 100% variance in the watershed protection district that you're asking us to set?
right. Her jurisdiction is to make sure we comply with the stormwater regulations of the town and the stormwater regulations of the state. And she has signed off on the fact that our stormwater design has done that.
Yeah, so she's a peer review consultant that you guys had to engage, right? That's what the planning board makes you do?
Yep.
Make
Yeah,
escrows?
From the DPW side of it.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So I know she's been doing it for years. I mean, I know she's very good, but
Very thorough.
as far as our record and our evidence, we are a separate statutory board. So it's just, don't-
But no, her review was extremely thorough.
I have no doubt.
Like I said, we went through 4 reiterations of the design. We did additional site testing for,
is she,
at her.
she's not here, right? Is
request.
she here to talk? She's not here
No.
to offer. Do you want to try to summarize what her review was in terms of what her recommendations like?
Well, I mean, many of the, when we first submitted our design, she had some questions regarding groundwater separation from our infiltration basins. She also had questions about our
Did you want to see this?
infiltration rates that we're using on the site. So we went back out there twice with additional geotechnical investigation to get her the information, to get all the information so we could finalize our design. We basically, the soils out there are good for infiltration, so we are infiltrating and meeting the state requirement for infiltration in the zone. It's a, obviously it's because of the water resource there. It's an important zone, so we actually have
You
a
mean the
higher
lake?
standard to reach.
Does that mean, you mean the lake?
Yeah, the lake.
Okay.
Yep. We have a higher standard to reach than say, in a standard site.
Okay. I don't mean to be difficult, I just don't know what it all means from her point of view yet. I know what you're saying, but I don't,
I mean, her
I don't know
point
what
of,
it means.
her point of view, and in the emails, basically, we've had to meet these requirements for state and for the town bylaw, the stormwater bylaw.
so did the planning board, and we talked about this at the last meeting, did they want you guys to engage in this prior to, like, your hearings with them in terms of the stormwater? Did they ask you to do that?
To do what else?
To do the stormwater management prior to their,
We're required as part of our
Right,
permitting
prior to that.
process through them, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
it's a precondition of getting on their docket?
No, we were meeting with them all along, but it's a precondition prior to approval that you have to meet all stormwater management requirements.
I see.
Right.
Okay.
The last hearing we had with them, we were continued because we had not finished our review with Lisa Eggleston.
Okay. All right, well, I mean, I haven't had a chance to review it. So I just want to go over with you our members for tonight. Let's see, so who's missing? So Denny's here, right? And Paul's here. And I'm here. So you need 5, if and when you want to close the hearing tonight. I just want to make sure you have your 5 members that, heard the evidence consistently from the first hearing. I know there was a continuance at the last one, and then, since there was no evidence at the last one. So that would be Paul, right?
Yes, sir.
So Paul, you signed a rehabilitation form. So did you miss any evidentiary hearing?
No, I was here on 9/13.
Oh, okay.
I missed 10/11, so that's what I signed the rehab for.
Oh, you missed 10/11, but
Yeah.
there was no evidence in
Right.
10/11. So that actually...
Just paperwork.
Just paperwork, okay. Doug is not here tonight. Doug has an excused absence, and so does Mr. Kuchar. And Denny, right?
Yep, same as Paul, on board.
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so then, there'd be one of the other alternates. Who was the last one to vote? Did you hear it on both times?
Yes,
And
but I don't know if it was me or Nathan was the last to vote.
Okay. So we would just have to designate one of the other alternates in terms of tonight.
Okay?
That seems to have heard evidence from both nights. I just want to make sure you're clear on the procedural aspect of the 5. Okay.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Paul.
All right, well, any discussion? Does anybody want to open up for any discussion?
Did you happen to have, we had also asked you for a scale of the project? Did you not?
For what?
The scale of the project, if there's a question on the scale, how you have it here. is not how the whole thing is. You know, you only have this piece.
Oh, the whole site?
Yep.
I have a plan I can show you that shows you the whole site.
I think it's this one.
I think
So why
that,
did we ask for scale of the project?
I know we did, right?
Yeah.
What was your concern, height?
Scale of project, the height, I think in terms of, as it relates to the treetops, right?
The height of the building is 35 feet.
Yep,
Tree tops are
60 to 80.
60 to 80 feet.
correct.
I mean, we specifically asked for these things, so we're prepared to make a decision at the meeting. So when there's nothing given to us, it's hard to make a decision when this has been continued for those 2 months. And I understand the time constraints you had with Lisa getting you actually a detailed project yesterday.
I'll grab it.
Okay, so we'll switch over there. Okay.
Just aggravates me. No, it's not a bad
So, in relationship to the height of the building, these were two renderings that were performed, developed for some site color comparisons. But the top of the ridges are 35 feet above grade. The existing trees out there are anywhere from 60 to 80 feet tall. So this is looking towards the lake. So you're basically entering the site and towards the lake. The topography does drop down, but the trees, the existing trees that are going to be behind here, these are all modeled exactly to the topography that's out there on site.
Yep.
And I know that folks who walk the site probably noticed, I mean,
It's huge.
it's lots of tall trees out there.
It's a beautiful piece, no doubt about it.
So does that answer your question on the height?
I wrote myself a note, and I can't remember what I wrote myself a note for, so I think so, yeah. That's what happens with age.
You're also asking about the overall,
Maybe I need to go there.
Get yourself a spot now, it's not cheap.
this is the whole piece of property. So that view, here's the driveway coming in from Edgewood, so that view was from here looking this way,
Okay.
and this is the lake down here.
I don't know, you can't see the lake at all. When we walk the property,
You can't see it from
No.
there at all?
no, you're not even nearly close to the lake.
We're 713 feet below.
That the last building?
From here to the closest.
Okay.
And you can't see it.
Even though it's higher in the hill?
Even though it's higher, you wouldn't even, you can't see past the trees enough to see lake.
Is that Lisa's letter?
No, I have nothing from Lisa. It's in there.
It's the second tab.
So just a little bit about
It's a complete.
the conservation piece. Was there any further discussion as to, I know you're interested in conveying a restriction to the trustees of the reservation as it relates to some conservation land. Was there any further discussion as to why you weren't going to deed that to the Conservation Commission? Because I think they have the custody and control over Half Mile Hill, which
They
is
have
what this
custody and-
abuts.
They have custody and control of Half Mile Hill. However, the restriction is with the trustees of the reservation, which is the same thing we're doing.
So why wouldn't you be given the restriction, if that's your intent, to the town, to the Conservation Commission?
Because we elected to stay with the trustees of the reservation, because that's what the other restrictions are with.
Which other restrictions?
The other three that are on Edgewood's property, as well as Half Mile Hill. There's only one restriction, one that you have out there, that is not with the trustees of the reservation. Jennifer contacted us and told us that all of those are with the trustees of the reservation.
Yeah, but with the exception of Half Mile Hill, right?
No, Half Mile Hill is the trustees of the reservation.
That's the trustees of the reservation,
Yep.
too?
Yep,
So there's no property over there that's maintained by the Conservation Commission?
no. Nope, it's all trustees of the reservation.
Did you have any, was there any draft language of the restriction that was submitted to us so we could read it?
For the trustees?
Yeah.
No, that was all submitted to the planning board. They were not getting that.
It's identical restriction to all the other
Right.
200 acres over there. It's all the same restriction.
So there's no property over there that's under the Custody and Control Conservation Commission? None?
Not to my understanding. You have one that's, what's the other group that you use other than the trustees? Do you know the name of that? Right, it's just that other piece of the property, Stephen's estate, but it's all through trustees of the reservation.
Yeah. I thought the Conservation Commission had their own management plan over there.
Not for Jennifer. Jennifer Hughes.
Any other questions on this side?
No.
SMRT, this is Lisa.
I don't know. Okay.
This is Lisa's report?
No, that's our stormwater report.
Is there a piece of paper from Lisa that says everything's good? That we have compliance?
We have an email that we forwarded to Al that states that we're in compliance.
I'm just going to echo the challenge of the remainder of the board, which is that something comes into the office. I mean, the virtue that you guys did, you worked with Lisa. You ticked a whole bunch of things in the last couple of months. The problem is, I got nothing that says that you've done all that, unfortunately. So I've got nothing to review. I've got nothing to take a look at, nothing to base a decision on. So generally speaking, when something comes into the board, if it's going to be presented to the board, there are 10 copies that are submitted so that each board member has a chance to review them in advance of the meeting so that we don't trip and fumble all over each other, sitting at the table, on the record, before you're on your way to the planning board, and now the appearance is that the zoning board doesn't have its act together, and you're going to go in front of the planning board and tell them, well, the zoning board couldn't act tonight. I'm not saying that that's where this is headed, but that's where I'm headed. And so now it looks like we're the obstructionist board. We didn't do our job. When the reality is, I don't have anything to look at except your report, not Lisa's report. I don't see any of the approvals that you suggested that you've gotten from the boards in town or the departments in town. So I'm sitting on my hands. I'm not going to do anything tonight. If a vote comes before me, I'm going to say no. That's the spot I'm in, unfortunately.
I mean, I think the challenge that we face is, because you're with competing boards, we're required to set the footprint. We're required effectively to, as it relates to the soil shape and topography, in the context of your variance, the nexus being the project itself or whatever it is you want to do, waive the bylaw and give 100% variance. So understanding the totality of what you want to do is one thing, but having something with the evidentiary value with which to do it, I think, is another.
Let me
So,
Paul,
I mean, I kind of share Paul's, I share Paul's sentiment as it relates to, obstructionist is one word. I mean, I look at us quite candidly as gatekeepers, if you will, of town meeting. When town meeting puts bylaws into effect, whatever year they put them into effect, they're the legislative authority of the town. We have an open town meeting, that's how it works. So then, an applicant comes to us, they want to do something, the building inspector denies them, they come to us and they say, this particular bylaw is unreasonable, it's creating a hardship for us, and, you're the Board of Appeals, and we want you to waive that bylaw. We want you to give us a variance, and here's why. And I think the only constraint that I'm hearing from Paul, I think in this context, and myself to a certain extent, is, how the evidence that we should be waiving the bylaw. I know it all sounds good. I understand planning board, you're tracking with them because they're the special permit granting authority, but they can't waive the bylaw.
Paul Hedstrom, I'm working with Bob in Edgewood, and I'm a lawyer and have a considerable background. I sat on the planning board for 12 years and was chairman for 10.
Yeah.
And I am sympathetic to your comments, but I think there is a little bit of confusion, perhaps on our end. We clearly need 3 special permits from the planning board, and we need a variance from the Board of Appeals. The Board of Appeals has granted variances for this particular construction issue with Pentucket Bank, as an example. It's 250 feet from the lake. You do it all the time, and you are absolutely right. You are the gatekeeper. But your evaluation is soils, topography, et cetera. That's the limit of your authority as a variance granting authority. But you're 100% correct, you're the gatekeeper. Without the variance, nothing happens. And I respect your request to have as much information as you want. Your evaluation is a soils topography evaluation. The Lisa's sign-off on that book occurred 2 days ago, and we emailed it when we got it to the various boards. That's as recently as she signed off on it. And I respect your right to look at the report and look at her sign it, but she clearly is the expert that your board would rely on, the planning board would rely on. She's the town's expert. She doesn't review it. She doesn't review it for the planning board. She reviews it for the town of North Andover.
Well, let me just correct
But
a
you need
couple
to
of things.
read it and understand it.
A couple of things. We don't waive watershed protection districts all the time. Each project rises and falls on its own
Absolutely.
merits.
Didn't suggest otherwise.
With respect to soil shape and topography, the board has broad discretion in terms of how it interprets that. We are effectively fact finders. So while we may rely,
Absolutely correct.
on what comes in from Ms. Eggleston, she's not effectively our expert. She hasn't been engaged by us, paid for by you, or engaged by you to present evidence to us. If she's working for another statutory board, she may be working for them. But the reason I asked for it is because I thought it was relevant in the context of what you're asking for.
Well, it clearly is relevant, but I don't know how the Board of Appeals would overrule the town's expert who has signed off on the
I
report.
don't think she's the town's expert. She's a peer review consultant.
For the town of North Andover.
Is she working for the zoning board of appeals under chapter 48?
Well, if you're suggesting that the Board of Appeals is going to have a separate review of the report, it's your
Saying
prerogative.
the burden is on the applicant. The burden is not on the board. It's
No
not my
question.
burden.
No question about that. But
You have to demonstrate to these 5 people who are volunteers, gatekeepers of the bylaw, of why it should be waived for your project. That's the standard. I didn't invent that. That's what it is.
I completely agree, and we're not looking for any waivers, we're looking for a variance to then go and secure a special permit, a variance for construction in the watershed. And this project has been carefully designed for 8 months. I think you've all appreciated how much work has gone in, the location of the building, the distance from the lake, the watershed calculations. You need to digest, and we need to get you whatever information you need to digest all of that. But it is a project that is literally not subject to Conservation Commission. There's no wetlands jurisdiction whatsoever. It's a building location that's precisely where it should be based on the 20.39 acres. The town gets a conservation restriction for almost 16 acres once we complete the project. I mean, it's a wonderful win-win for everybody. And I want the board to embrace that once they have all the information they need.
I understand and respect the totality of what you're doing. I get it. You know, I'm sort of building on what Paul said. You guys have been working on it for 8 months. You are likely working at the administrative level. But the way our town works, you know, we've been involved for a couple of months. As you read, you're very gracious to give us the site walk. You know, the site work, I think, was very helpful. But I think in terms of our record and in terms of the file, I don't know, you know, I think it's up to you in terms of what you choose to submit to us or don't submit to us. It's ultimately your petition.
We want you to have everything you need, and have always felt that way. And the Lisa Eggleston sign-off 2 days ago, if there is a gap in the knowledge component of that, we'll correct it.
Yeah.
That's all we can do.
I have no doubt. So we have what we have for tonight. Any other discussion? Discussion points, any further discussion? Well, I mean, I guess the question is, are you satisfied with what you've put into the public hearing, and you'd like us to close the public hearing? Or would you like us not to close the public hearing and give everybody a chance to digest all that? It's up to you.
Well, a number of the board members have indicated they have not had a chance to digest some of the information. I would not want to close a public hearing if there are board members that have questions.
Okay. All right. What is our next meeting date, Mel? December 13th.
What happened to you?
Because
We're in November
we're
now.
in November.
Um,
Next week is voting.
I can tell you it's possible, December 13th would be our next meeting. It is possible I would have a conflict that night. I can tell you I may not be at that meeting. That doesn't mean you wouldn't have 5 members to go forward. I think I have a conflict that night. So,
We
just,
don't do anything without the chairman.
no, you got very competent people here, but
No
that's I know that I'm potentially conflicted out. So I'm just disclosing that. But that would be our next regular meeting, if you wanted to be on the docket for that night, if that makes everybody happy
Hmm?
and can digest the rest of the record. Sometimes things work better when I'm not around, to be perfectly honest with you. That's what I'm told. The meetings happen in record time.
Well, I
All I'm
can't
doing is-
dispute
All
that.
I'm doing is smiling when you say that.
I can't change the facts. Them's the facts.
So when is the next meeting that all the members who have sat on these, now 2 hearings and 1 continued?
Well, we meet once a month, so because of the election, we were here tonight. Everybody, so who would be voting tonight, I think, Merrill informed us that, I'm sorry, you had voted on the last one, right? Was that the deal?
Yeah, according to Merrill.
Okay, so Mr. Weintraub voted on the last one, so if we were to vote anything substantive tonight as it related to closing the public hearing, Ms. Jacobs would have been our other alternate, and I'd be designated. But as from an evidentiary perspective, everybody that's here tonight is eligible for your next meeting. In addition to, I guess that would be it. Everybody who's here tonight would be eligible.
So currently you have 6 people now.
Right.
Al's not here on December 13th. You still will
You'll
have a
have 5.
5-member board,
Right.
pending everyone that's
Likely
here.
presided over by Ms. McIntyre.
For
No pressure.
For pretty obvious reasons, we are most anxious to get this thing closed and get an affirmative read from the board.
Yeah.
We expect to have our planning board decision tonight, and if we do, and we don't know yet, but I expect we will, we've seen the draft decision, it's clearly subject to the gatekeeper variance issue, so nothing.
Nothing
occurs.
stops them from rendering a decision subject to our approval.
Oh, I understand, no, we respect that, and,
Yeah.
the beauty of.
I don't know how they feel about it.
The beauty, they recognize your power.
It's about time.
That's a
The
first.
the beauty of
That's
this
not-
project, quite honestly, and very seriously, is with the design
good.
as you've digested today, it is completely compliant with every aspect of applicable rules and regulations, and a soils topography test,
Yeah.
you know, and I've only been a real estate lawyer for 43 years, I've never seen a better addressing of the soils topography test. It's right in the right spot
Yeah.
in relation to that, you know, that large piece of land.
Yeah.
It's the most unusual, most beneficial project. So we really are anxious to get.
It has a lot of moving parts. I'll grant you
It's just
that.
we're anxious to get it finished and have everybody, every board member, every you know, the Edgewood people smiling that this thing is going to be a credit to the town, so.
Yeah, I understand what it is you want to do. I get it. So I guess it's up to you guys. I'm not gonna,
Do we know if folks will be here on the 13th? Do we know that now? That
I'll be here on the
that meeting
13th.
will be good?
I should be here. I don't see why not.
I'll be here.
yeah.
Any conflicts, Ms. McIntyre?
It is my husband's birthday, but that's okay. I've known him for so many years, so.
You can make it up to him later.
He's been suffering through the ZBA for a long time.
He really has.
Well, what's another
Anniversary.
I
meeting?
would I'll make every effort to be here, but I do believe I'm conflicted out, just so you know.
I will just say, I think just for setting precedent for, you know, looking at other situations, whether it be something from Edgewood or other applicants, it is just helpful, and I understand that you guys are just getting a report 2 days ago, which I'm sympathetic to. I think it is just helpful to have that and read it, not necessarily saying we'd go against it, but my concern becomes is if we sit here and just take your word for it and don't have the documents in front of us, a year from now, somebody's coming here and going, yeah, I don't have the report, but a year ago, you guys didn't really care much about that.
No, that's a very significant issue. I completely,
That's where I stand on
sympathize
that
with that.
issue, because I think the project is a great project, but it's nice to have all of the information so that it just holds a standard.
no, you're absolutely right. I was playing with Jim in the go-go 80s and early 90s when, you had 19 zoning articles and people screaming and subdivisions, and it was a battle, and you really have to be careful. It's a big responsibility.
Sometimes it's also nice to have some feedback from the planning board. If a project like this, I think also, that they're likely to approve. I think it sort of sets the tone in terms of the planning aspects of the project. But
So
So
just,
do you need from the planning board all of the sign-offs from DPW, from tech, from police, from
I
fire, from
think-
all of those folks?
I think anything you have that's relevant, that you want to file to support your position, you can do that.
so for me, that detail would probably be the planning board's decision. So in the event that the planning board does give you
Get a copy of this.
if you present to the board in a timely manner the copy of the decision, if you do have it tonight, I would like to see that as well, and I think that will have all those, as well as Lisa's, which is actually very important to, I know Lisa's gonna give you a one-page letter or a two-page letter
Right.
summarizing everything up, and which
She
she,
actually responded, it was 24 hours ago that we received.
yes,
So-
not 2 days, it was yesterday, it was the
We
two-
recognize this,
Understand
It's
it,
all
you know,
running together in my
Her
head.
first responses were 4 pages.
and she went down to 2, right?
Yes,
Yeah, that's her MO.
it's not bad.
Yeah,
It's not bad.
very detailed review.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yes.
since Ellen was happy to give her perspective, I'll give mine. What I would ask for is, as an attorney and former planning board chair, I would say, whatever you have that papers the file, even if that makes my file this thick, I would love to have. I may ignore 95% of it, and it may just be reference material, but there might be a nugget in that other 95% that I'm gonna need to take a look at. That's kind of the backbone. But more importantly, as Ms. McIntyre was reciting earlier, what she asked for something specific at the hearing on 9/13, and it feels like that wasn't delivered. So I guess the primary ask is, whatever you got, paper the file, hit me. And then less formally, if a planning board member such as Ms. McIntyre asks for something specific, I think we as a board tend to say, ask the applicant, please deliver that.
Understand.
And with that, shall we, do you need any paperwork? Just make a motion to continue, Mr. Chair?
Well, if you would like us to continue this to that
Yes, we
meeting, we
would.
will. Okay, so we'll hear that motion.
I'll make a motion to continue this to December 13th, Mr. Chair.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Well, thank you for your time.
Stands continued,
Have a
okay.
Good luck
Good luck
tonight.
at the planning board.
This is yours.
Send our regards.
Keep it if you want for your file.
Is that for our file?
Yeah, you can have it.
All right, we'll take that.
That's one less binder.
I thought that's what was delivered by PDF. No?
I don't know.
We'll-
It's one less copy from
Hey,
Merrill.
we'll take it. Paper Merrill's file, too.
Hey,
Take it. All right, thanks very
Yes.
much. Good luck.
If anything, we need to get to the board that is identified in the interim.
Yeah, what we'll do is I'll ask Merrill to summarize the list for you, so
Okay.
it's clear.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
got it.
Good luck.
Thanks.
have a good one.
All right, moving right along to our last continued public hearing, the petitioner for Lot 5 Katuitt Street for the Robert J. Burke Trust by attorney John Burke for 0 Leiden Street, map 47, parcels 151. We have for district. And Attorney Burke, just while you're getting set up, I think we have 2 new members for you tonight as well. That have rehabilitated from your last meeting, Mr. Koch and Mr. Morgenthau.
Evening.
How are you?
How are you?
Here we have the butters back.
We left here,
Boy,
may I address the board on some of the things that I was asked to get information from?
you may. Yes, it's your part.
On the last date, there were several abutters here, and they raised a number of issues. I think one of the primary issues was the trees on the lot. One of the abutters presented some photos and asked if the trees were on our lot or on the Village Green property. I went out the morning after the hearing with the engineer. The trees actually are on the Village Green lot. There is a set of orange stakes that the engineer put out that are right along the edge of the trees. The branches do, however, encroach upon the property of our property. There's a second set of stakes that are there that were depicted in the pictures provided by the abutters. That is actually the corner of the garage as you pull in. So that's more in the middle of the lot. So there's two sets of orange stakes there. There's one depicting the corner, and along the tree line, there is a series of stakes that are depicting the lot line. So that was the first thing. The second thing Mr. Manzi asked for was the stormwater and the runoff. I consulted with Mr. Osgood, our engineer, and he indicated that the gutters are directed to an underground infiltration system that will be located under the driveway, and the site drainage is captured in a small pond on the low side of the property adjacent to the roadway. The site plan has been approved by the Conservation Commission, and it's in compliance with the Massachusetts Stormwater Management regulations. There is no increase in the rate of flow leaving the site, and runoff from the paved surfaces is treated in the small pond. So I did want to address that as well. Ms. McIntyre asked on the last date, I think an abutter raised an issue about how would we regulate things like the homeowners putting trash out. Ms. McIntyre asked on the last date for a proposed set of rules and regulations from one of the other condos that are there. I provided a copy yesterday to the office, and in there it has regulations, rules, and bylaws that indicate it's Exhibit B on the second document in front of you. And it has 10 or 12 proposed rules and regulations, as well as whatever the developer wants to put in there, or whoever develops the property. So there are ways to regulate what these two homeowners do. Because, and as always, the laws of North Andover, the laws of Massachusetts would prevent these homeowners that move in here from doing anything illegal on any of the Village Green property, obviously. You can't trespass and you can't litter and things like that. The other thing I believe Ms. McIntyre asked for was the actual conservation application. On the last date I provided the extension, and I provided a copy of the conservation order there for this property that's in front of it. Yes. Yes. No. The last thing I think Ms. McIntyre asked for was...
She was on a roll to us.
Apparently I was.
She wanted to know the date of the last special permit we received, and it was 2013. And I was able to obtain a copy from the clerk's office, and it was a special permit for, that was our last one. The two previous to that were, I think, 2011 and 2010. But it was a special permit of this 5-lot parcel. We've had, for those that weren't here last time, this would be the 4th lot on this parcel that we're requesting a special permit for. The other 3 were granted by this board.
Do we have that too?
What?
Is that here in our packet too?
No, no, I think you asked for the date.
Okay.
So I did, I have a copy. Would you like to see it?
Could I just look at it
Sure.
quickly, please? My name's obviously on it.
So the
but-
bylaws, are not exact ones that you would use, but they're guideline as to what you have used.
That is what we have used on the 3 units there. As I said to the board last time, whoever, whether it's my family or someone else that develops this property, they would have to put a master deed, and they would have to put rules and regulations in place.
Sure.
You ready?
And on the plan in front of you that was provided in the original packet, I think you can see it's reflected on in the lower left corner, the drainage. I think the only other thing would be that those trees do overhang what would probably be the patios in the back of the house, and I do want the board to know that.
So their trees are overhanging on your property?
That's correct.
Okay.
And lastly, the engineer indicated on the trees that the trees are higher than the lot it is right now, but the land would have to be built up a little, which may save the roots and everything on those trees, because we'd have to build it up so there wouldn't be as significant a swale as there is right now.
So what that means, I think, just for explanation purposes, trees that overhang onto other people's property, they do have a right to trim them back on their side, So I guess that the association, however the association maintains their vegetation or their trees, that's something for you guys to consider, one way or the other. Is that a correct summation?
That's correct.
Okay. Any further discussion? I know you're kind of getting caught up. We had a lot of discussion at the last meeting about the trees and the lot.
I'm sure this is established already for the record, Mr. Chair, but I'm just saying it out loud for tonight, which is that just a look at the paperwork suggests that this is otherwise in conformance with the bylaw. There's no...
It is.
There's plenty of area, lot size, all the setbacks, and parking is all in conformance.
It is, and we had a discussion at the last meeting, as you're likely aware, in terms of what they could do by right with a single family as opposed to a special permit for the multifamily. And, so we had some discussions around that, discussions around where the trees were. That was pretty significant because it was unclear at the last meeting whose property the trees were on. There seemed to be some kind of divide line, but just hadn't been established.
Just a quick review, Mr. Chair. There are other multifamilies. Obviously Village Green is littered with it, but how about this this stuff down on Katuitt Street? That's all Village Green property?
I believe
Those are other
That-
two
that was all
condos.
covered, yeah.
All condos?
I can answer that. This is the 5-lot locus. Sorry. Just for point of reference, this is Burke Real Estate.
Yep.
2-family by special permit, 2-family by special permit, 2-family by special permit. This lot runs all the way down here. This is the 5th lot.
Yep.
Village Green, Village Green. When we get over here to Katuitt Street, as I said, office, 2-family, 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 all multifamily. Multifamily, 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 all through here, right up to here. So I would say it's 95, 99, if not 100% 2-family, or multifamily
Appreciate it.
in that area.
Can I see that lot where your office is?
Sure. Right here.
It's a little building.
So would there eventually be a two-family on that?
Up here,
Yes.
we would have to apply for a special permit.
There's not one before us, right?
No, no, single family and an office.
Okay.
It's not even, it's an office right now.
Okay. So, was there any more discussion on landscaping?
Yes, 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 yes.
Or did you already say that?
No, there is a... Because of the time frame, we were able to get I asked Dana Adams who does a lot of our landscaping, put together a plan based on the, bear with me 1 minute, please.
Sure.
That depicts the front of the house. There's a driveway here that comes out here. That is what Mr. Together for us today.
Oh, yeah, okay. So fairly typical, I guess, in terms of...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that's okay.
I don't have to worry about it. And again, that's subject to change based on the developer, but obviously, and I expect there'd be plantings in the back by the patio as well, to provide some sort of privacy screen, sort of.
Where the trees are,
What?
where the trees are.
Where the trees are, yes.
Right, so, okay. All right. Any further discussion from the board? Any new comments from the abutters, anything new you'd like to be heard on? All right. Why don't we do that? I'd ask you just try to keep it to new information as opposed to what from last time.
Hello, everyone. I am Amy Monroe. I live at 52 Village Green Drive. Diane Heston, who is listed, is here with me as well. She's my mother. A couple of things I just wanted to point out. First, I just wanted to mention that the multifamily dwellings on Katuitt, mentioned by Mr. Burke, I just want to point out that streetwise, they are entirely 100% separate from where Mr. Burke is requesting his latest special permit. And I would just like to refer to Section 1 of the zoning bylaw of North Andover. And I'm looking at page number 21. It says the purpose of this bylaw is the promotion of the health, safety, convenience, morals, and welfare of the inhabitants of North Andover. I'm skipping forward a little bit. And as they may be further amended by regulating and restricting the use of land and buildings thereby. And there are 11 subsections, but I'd like to speak to 2. Number 4 is the lessening congestion of traffic. Mr. Burke said in the previous hearing that the construction he estimated would only add 4 cars to the area. However, this land will be going to a developer, and I don't believe that that figure can be confidently relied upon. Traffic and congestion is an issue in Village Green in this area, and there's only one point of entrance and exit. It's already congested enough. Which brings me to number 5, preventing undue concentration of population. Mr. Burke said previously that he had to send out about 250 abutters notices. That is just individual units, and I just want to stress that that is not residents, that's just the units. So the actual number of residents living within this area is actually much higher. For these reasons, as well as the opinions of my neighbors, this is the reason why I oppose the special permit for the condos versus the single family that he's already approved for. Thank you very much for listening to me. And I'd also like to mention one other thing. There is a map that we have, and I want to point out that all of the dwellings that are the multifamily, the larger townhouse buildings that are shown in there, that is for Village Green East. This area is comprised of two separate areas, Village Green East and Village Green West. What you can see is Village Green East. And I just want to point out that there are an additional 10 buildings within this self-contained area that are also there as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Sure.
Hi, Keith Connors, 4 Village Green Drive. I just actually wanted to ask or clarify 2 things when we were talking about the trees and that it is on Village Green property. And I think Mr. Burke was mentioning that there's a garage that will be kind of central to the property line. If you're looking at the linear line and looking at the center part where the trees are. So it sounds like it come closer. And what I don't know, and I'm just wondering as a concerned abutter, is if you damage, weaken, or kill the trees, is it then incumbent upon the builder, developer to replace those trees? And if you're replacing them, you're not going to get them to the age of 80 years insufficiently covering the view of this new structure, right? You're going to have spindly little things that...
Well, we're not gonna, I mean, I think we have to stop short of giving legal advice in terms of what, what we know generally is that trees that hang on one side or the other
Right.
can be trimmed. Anything else you would have to either, discuss through the association or with your own council or...
So what I was asking as a zoning board, is that considerations that you have to take, and do you have to take that into consideration of the impact on the existing property owners in terms of what's there, what they own, what will get damaged or changed? It's something I don't know because I'm not on your side.
Well, we take everything, we take everything into consideration in terms of whatever weight the board gives it. It's an application for special permit, so
Okay.
in terms of what is proposed is consistent and in harmony with the surrounding properties and the statutory abutters,
Right.
the general neighborhood.
Right. And maybe,
it's
Mr.
like
Burke,
if-
if you come back up, maybe you can, I don't know if you, in your law background, dealing specifically with land issues, if in fact trees are damaged or killed during the development process, who's incumbent upon replacing those and what the compensation is on that?
I just don't think that's I don't think that's an appropriate question. I mean, in terms of, I think Mr. Burke can give you legal advice as it relates to something that might be materially adverse to his own client. All right, I think the question is, you'd have to seek that out through your own counsel.
Okay. All right.
You know what I mean?
I guess I do.
So,
Not knowing what
I mean,
purview you
the
have as a
question,
board.
the question is, who damages the trees and how are they damaged? I don't know. I mean, nothing's damaged yet.
No,
So-
I'm not saying anything is.
I mean-
So we're looking at, there's going to be development, it's going to come close to these trees. I didn't know in terms of what authority that you have, in terms of the knowledge that you have of who has responsibility for that. And I'm hearing that that's not the area that you cover, so that's fine.
I think we have to look at the application and its merits in terms of, and anybody else that wants to weigh in is more than welcome to, what's proposed and, what those impacts are.
Yeah.
The trees, we have evidence that the trees are on your side, but they hang on his side.
Yeah.
There was evidence at the last meeting that you guys like to use that field for either parking or wiffle ball
Right.
games or whatever, right?
Right.
So, you have a general neighbor relationship that,
Right.
you have to figure out how that's
Right.
gonna work.
Okay, all right. So I'm learning from you.
You know what I mean?
I'm raising that as a concern.
Yeah, no,
If they get killed, I mean, part of the whole thing about making this palatable is that, well, at least they'll be hidden by these massive trees, and if they're damaged and they get destroyed, well, that really changes the whole scenario for my neighbors and I, so that's why.
Sure, and I guess the bigger impact is I would ask the question, if they're Village Green's trees,
Yeah,
what do you folks do to maintain them?
right. Well, we
In
have
terms of your
landscape,
own, in terms of your association? I mean, seriously,
Uh-huh.
they seem like very, very nice, magnificent
Right.
trees, so I don't know what your management plans are
Yeah.
and,
Well,
how
we
you
just
do that.
presented with this now, we'd have to find out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't know until until the last meeting that this was happening. It's not something we've been thinking of for years of, these trees are over an open field, geez, should we think about cutting them back? So you're asking me something that's just being presented.
I just raised it on the alternative,
Yeah.
because they're your trees,
Right. So,
you know?
yeah, okay, and the other thing is, and again, maybe this doesn't fall under it, when you're just talking about the issue of when it was raised, and we appreciate that, Eileen, about in terms of garbage, and now that these are public ways, they weren't always in Village Green. What, what was found out in our policies and how that's going to get handled. I wasn't hearing that aspect of it, and I didn't know if that's something that's information that gets divulged and that we get a better sense as abutters and as neighbors of what those plans are.
I'm sorry, which ones?
In terms of the trash removal.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'd be curious to have that information, but if it's not something that's part of this process, again, that's fine.
Okay.
Those were the two concerns. Thank you.
Great.
It's on the HOH exam.
Do you want to address the trash and anything else, Mr. Burke? Then we'll see if there's any other questions.
Being a public way, the homeowners here, the condos, will have access to town trash. The reason I brought the bylaws in was because it was brought up as to how could Village Green enforce someone from doing something on their property, or the residents of Village Green.
Okay.
Like any neighbor in this town or any town, if someone does something and litters or does something on, you can enforce that. The suggestion here is that one homeowner, because I think it was raised by an abutter, one homeowner, if one was an owner and one was a renter, they couldn't control the other. It's clear through the bylaws that are put in place, the rules and regulations, that they can enforce that. If they decided to litter on Village Green property, Village Green obviously could take appropriate authority with the action with the authorities. We anticipate, just like the houses on Catuit Street, that they'll be serviced by public services for trash and the like. I can't stress enough that the properties, if they go by anything that the other properties were sold for, people are not going to allow these properties to go into disrepair. It just wouldn't make common sense financially. So I don't anticipate, and I haven't seen it on Catuit Street, I do not expect to see it here, that there'll be any of these properties in disrepair. I just can't see that. Do we have access to Village Green garbage? No, we don't. But it is a public way that we have access to town services, and they'll have to make arrangements with town services, because town services will now pull onto that road, I anticipate, to pick up their garbage.
Does the town currently pick up the Village Green trash as well when they come through? Okay. So let me rephrase the question. As it relates to the abutters that are here, is your trash picked up by the town?
Yes.
Okay.
So I anticipate it's just one more stop for the trash services.
So the enforcement authorities could be the building inspector, police department, DPW, whomever would be in the purview of enforcing different types of issues. During construction, it would likely be the building inspector. After construction, it could still be a zoning issue through the building inspector or a DPW. That's what it sounds like. I think in terms of what remedies you have, to the extent the permit was granted, that would be the way you would pursue it, I would think, through those town officials, that's their job, to make sure that things are in compliance.
May I address one of the other abutters'
Yes, of
questions,
course.
Mr. Chair? I did use the term 4 cars. That is on an average of 2 cars per side. As has been maintained here and stated here, there's only one entrance into Village Green. I've been in there on a daily basis. Hundreds of cars go in and out of there on a daily basis. My suggestion is, but by adding these 2 units, we're increasing it by approximately 2 cars per day, with two cars per unit. They're 3-bedroom units, each of them. The traditional nuclear 2 cars per unit. If we had, and if you want to look at it differently, if we had a single family, there'd be 2 cars, so we're really only increasing it by 2 additional cars, is my suggestion. That's where I came up with that number.
I have 5 cars in my house, and I'm a single family.
None of them are registered.
I think I have about 5 as well.
But in the context of the lot itself, you have shown parking through your
That's
garage
correct.
and
Though.
overflow, so,
That's weird.
it looks like you've provided, you know, two various forms of parking as it relates to the lot
For
itself.
both units, that's
Yeah.
correct.
All right. Any other questions? What else would you guys like to talk about? You want something to...
This to the board in case
Sure, come on up.
it's helpful.
Okay.
This is the drawing that shows Village Green East only. And there are an additional 10 buildings that are not shown on this. And they're up there.
So, all right, but you have, but you have to
In
understand,
terms of population density, in
Yep.
case it was ever helpful to the board.
it is helpful. So, you know, the way the notices go out, it's 300 feet by lot line. That's the legal standard for who the notices go out for. So everyone that got notice, it would be 300 feet any direction of the lot line. So that's certainly helpful as far as the layout goes.
On that plan, where is the project that's the subject of tonight's hearing?
Right here.
Okay.
Just for kind of reference, Madison Grove Street would be right there.
Yeah?
So again, there would be an additional 10 back there.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's great. Did you want us to, I mean, is that something you wanted us to keep or not? Okay.
I didn't bring it, so I
Objections, Mr.?
No.
Okay. All right, so we'll keep this in the file too.
You're not holding the crease. Oh, gosh, what are you doing? Oh, my God.
Is this your first day on the board, Al?
Jesus, working.
Some days it feels like it, that's for sure.
With Ellen on your left, every day's a challenge.
Good. Who else would like to come up? Anybody else? Okay. Mr. Burke, you have no objection to this. Is there anything else you'd like to add? This is your petition. What would you like us to do this evening?
I would like to close the public hearing if there are no other questions and request a vote.
Okay. So I think that before we get to that, so Nathan, we determined you voted at the last.
Yes.
You were the last, so that means Alexandria would be the fifth vote in terms of the five, since there's six of us up here. Okay, just so you know, because you were at the last one.
Yes.
Was this it?
Yeah.
Was this it? Yeah, why don't you just pass that down now?
Is that to Merrill?
All right, so is there any further discussion? The applicant would like us to close the hearing?
You may want to put this to it now.
Oh, yeah. Was this already filed?
Landscaping?
This wasn't filed? The other documents we had were filed, the conservation.
Going in? What's that?
13 vote US. Do you want that marked?
Oh, do you want to put this in the record?
It's up to you, I just got the dates, but it's up to you.
No, I don't really,
want it?
yeah, I just figured
Okay. All right, well then, if you want the hearing closed, I'll hear if everything is in, I'll hear a motion to close the hearing, and then we can deliberate.
I'll make a motion to close, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Mr. Clutch, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by John Jacobs, all in favor? Aye. Those in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
Okay. All right, I'll declare the hearing closed. We can have further discussion or deliberations on the petition. If any. Any comments, any discussion points?
I don't have anything further.
You know, I think that what's think the application is really consistent with the zoning, quite candidly. You know, in terms of the multi-use and conforming, I think most of what's in the general area is multifamily. I think it's consistent with that. Clearly, you know, I think can be a nice-looking project, you know, through the construction controls. I don't think that the abutters are without the ability to address any issues as it relates to any form of construction. You're all very active neighbors and abutters. You own the trees. So, you know, I think I'm supportive of the petition, you know, so long as it's properly with the landscaping and the stormwater, consistent with the conservation approvals that already exist. I think it's not something that doesn't generally fit within the neighborhood. It's not like an industrial building being put into the middle of a neighborhood. It's 2 units, and it's a public way. So generally, I think that, I mean, I'm supportive of the project. I think the developer or the builder certainly has enough controls by means of the restrictions that would go in place to give your community more than enough ability to redress whatever issues may come up as they come up with neighbors. At least generally that's how I see it. Clearly, they're very nice trees, and I appreciate the view. I'm very sympathetic to that. Short of, you know, but it's still somebody else's property, you know. So that's how I see it anyway. I don't know if there's anything else anybody would want to say. Okay. Well, then I can't make a motion, so generally we move projects in the affirmative. They require 4 votes.
I don't have it. I don't have a notice. No.
Have the notice? I have the notice.
Do you vote?
You do not have a notice. There's no notice.
I had the notice. Give me a second. Errol, do we have the public here? Shouldn't have it. I know I have one. Attorney Burke,
The notice, so.
do you happen to have your notice? Okay, I got one. What happened to the notices? There it is. There, 4 point, well, this is the application.
All right, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we move everything in the affirmative. It requires 4 votes.
The motion, I'm making a motion to approve the petition of Robert J. Burke Trust for property at Lot 5, Katuitt Street, 0 Layden Street, map 47, parcels 151, North Andover, Massachusetts, 01845 in the R4 zoning district. The motion is to approve a special permit from sections 4.122.14, 4.122.14A.B of the zoning bylaw, construction of a 2-family home in the R4 zoning district as required by the Zoning Board of Appeals. in that approval, Mr. Chair, make reference to a hand-sketched landscaping plan that's basically titled duplex number 16-55. Looking at a, what do we call this? A set of plans titled duplex number 1655, unit square feet 1792, total square feet 3584, North Andover, Massachusetts, the estate of Robert J. Burke, drawn by Colonial Drafting and dated Friday, August 12th, 2016. Plans number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, as well as a proposed duplex site plan, assessors map 47, lot 151, Layden Street, North Andover, Massachusetts, John D. Burke, Esquire, 14 Chickering Road, North Andover, Massachusetts. Project 16-1139, the date of this plan is September 6, 2016, drawn by CPH. CS 1002, there is only one sheet, so sheet 1 of 1. I think that's it. Is there any more material, Mr. Chair? That's
I think there was the
unless-
conservation decision
And the bylaws?
And the Exhibit A and B.
and Exhibit A and B of the bylaws. This is a
This is?
yeah, conservation decision.
Okay. Also referenced, Mr. Chair, is a Conservation Commissioner of North Andover for John Burke, 14 Chickering Road, for the date of NOI is 8/25/2013. Public hearing was closed 9/25/13, and the date of issuance of the decision is 9/26/2013. This was recorded at the Registry of Deeds, Book 13919, page 10, on July 21st, 2014. Instrument number 15469, if anyone's interested. And further, there is Exhibit A to that, appears to be bylaws 29-31 Hillcrest Farms Condominium Trust, which is recorded at Book 10-811, page 274, instrument number 19605. Is that all you're looking for?
Yep, that's what I was looking for. All right, so there is a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Ms. McIntyre. Okay, we'll call the vote. Mr. Koch, you in favor?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Morgenthau? Yes.
Yes.
Ms. McIntyre?
Yes.
Chairman's also in favor, so I'll declare that approved, and the decision will issue within 14 days with the 20-day appeal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Good luck to both you guys.
All right, I seem to have lost my agenda here in the paper shuffle.
There it is.
All of us.
We have the meeting calendar back on?
Those are yours.
You tabled it because you didn't have a full board, so you wanted everyone here
For
to
what,
vote
the
on the
calendar?
meeting.
Oh,
Calendar.
the meeting calendar,
Well, there's
just the
also a
dates.
question of the June 13th one, right?
Yeah, only so we're only looking as it relates to the dates themselves. All those other, I'm not looking to approve your document deadlines, just the meeting calendar date, because all that's a function of the date. So if the date changes.
As I recite every year, just for the record, Mr. Chair, I am unavailable on the second Tuesday of October, so October 10th, I will not be available. Otherwise,
How do you know that a year in advance?
Because it's the change.
Yeah, right,
Oh.
okay. So, I mean, clearly, it's really just a guideline for the purposes of setting rooms, room reservation, because with 48 hours, we can change the meetings going forward as we need to. So,
Did we knock off the July 11th?
I don't know, I lost the calendar.
Yes, I did too.
July 11th is knocked off. We have June 13th to be
Okay.
determined, and then August the 8th. I probably won't be available on August the 8th.
I won't be here February 14th.
See, this is what happens when we do it so far in advance.
I think February 14th
I'm talking 3 months.
is a delivery date?
I will deliver hopefully 13 days before.
Okay. So do you need us to take any action on this now, or is this,
What
What?
did you do?
do you need us to approve it?
My son's birthday's January.
Well,
It's,
I'm willing to hear a motion as to meeting date and time
How do I get this out?
only because the location's subject to change, right?
For ice cream.
Because we don't know what room we're getting.
And everything they said you can't, you do.
So if you want to move to approve the date and time, subject to change, in case things change.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. So let's approve date and time only. Where'd the agenda go? Oh,
Adjourn.
we'll
Adjourn.
hear a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
There's a rush to second that.
Aye.
I declare us adjourned.